So welcome, everyone. Thank you for attending this 3 days. Where nothing will be offered. So this first day is titled The Rise and Fall of the Empire of Words. So what is being suggested is that if we all strip down everything, there are no words. Every word is just a made-up word. They're not true, neither false. Since true or false are just words, and words are unreal because simply there's not two. If we go down to the definition of non-duality, although that's just another word, non-duality, simply not two. In other words, words are just made up of words that are made up. So going back to simply not two, there are no words. Every single word is just an appearance, a trick backed by another word. Again, if you look up a word in a dictionary, you'll just see words. Words. A reality made up of words, because reality is just a word. So in the next 3 sessions, there's going to be an apparent tackling of the biggest words out there that seems to be the stuckness in words. Words like God, awareness, consciousness, me, you, enlightenment. They're all made up words. But who made them up? Well, words just make up words. Well-maintained words to maintain the most obvious illusion, which is you. You only appear in thoughts, yet somehow you're just made up of more thoughts. You're just a word. Even when you say, well, I feel it in my heart, my soul. Heart and soul are just words again. Even if what you think is true, that is just another thought, another word. Truth is also a made-up word. There's nothing wrong or right about words, because wrong or right are just made up of words. Meanings is just a word. This is strongly what I believe is a complete delusion. Because it's just a bunch of words that solidifies what is real to me. But the me is just a word. It maintains the separation by creating a division by that conviction of the word called I, that thinks that it is real. Furthermore, it adds other special words to maintain its reality like I am, or I am awareness, or ultimately, I am God. Or even let's go to the flip side of I am nothing. Nothing is just a word. It's dream speak. So if you say that I am a God, or I am nothing, or I am everything, or I am that, let's translate that. The word is just a word. The word is just a word. The word creates another word to loop. It just loops towards to hide what's obvious, that there are no words. Because again, let's go back into simply not two. The moment that the word is uttered, the moment that a word is spoken or thought of, that's separation. So every thought, every word, every single idea, concepts is just an illusion. Everything that you can think about is made up of words that are completely made up, masterminded seemingly by the root of all words, separation, which cannot really be caught up in a word. It's just an illusion. It's just a thought. I, or you, the secret desire to be real, makes up other words like consciousness, pure, God, infallible words to remain unquestionable reality. But reality is just made up of words. It's an empire of words. It's a tower of belief system. It's architecture that does not have any reality or non-reality even. You don't exist in reality because it's just a word about a word existing in words. Since reality and you are just words, equally empty. So the apparent you is hidden in a tower of words, in an empire of words, like mountains of empty meanings, and imprisoned by a belief system when words are strung along, so real so that it's not, you cannot penetrate it by doubts because that's just another word. Because there's all of a sudden the absolute truth. And then the hidden secret word that is the biggest made up word is God. And that's the word that you're not supposed to question. And then even if that is toppled down, now, well, I don't believe in God, then, and it becomes consciousness. Surely there must be consciousness. For this to happen, there must be consciousness or awareness or a source or a self. It's just words that keeps on recycling. The moment that you think that there's consciousness, that's separation. The moment that there's awareness, that's another separation. So this fortress is made up of words that rises and falls by making them real as you secretly maintain the fantasy of reality. It's fantasy. That even if you become aware of your absolute nature, which is just the most divisive word ever, which is God, the best made up word ever, it's simply not true. Because who came up with the word God, or who even came up with words? That's division. There's nothing wrong or right about division. So for a word to be made up, there has to be a creator. But the creator is also not true. Simply, if it appears as a word, it is made up. Whatever you are thinking right now is completely made up. How do you know? Or how do you think? No one knows, because you'll just come up with more words to support that, what you feel is true or what you think is true, which is just backed up with a series of words. It's really silly. It's just a really play of words. You cannot exist because exist is just a word. Even when you think, well, I really can't, it's really palpable. But that's just backed up by another word. The moment that you think that you exist or not exist even, it's just another fantasy. It's just a flurry of words. But as long as you maintain that you're real, again, even real is a made up word, by defending your words by other words like reality or the absolute, as perceived by you and your made up words, even when you say, well, it's all really nothing. Well, nothing is just another word. Of course, there's no you, because you is just a word. Like the root of words comes from you, but since there's no you, everything that you will make up is just going to be made up of empty words. But somehow words are being used in this communication. It's just to illuminate, to uproot that the root word is, there's no root word. There's no original word. There's no beginning and there's no end. Words only prolongs what has always been obvious. What rings true without the aid of words or belief system. And the greatest fear of all, which is death, absence, nothing. You can't say it in words. It's unknowable. It's unthinkable. It's incomprehensible. In the story, you are dead and you're using dead language. This is like speaking in tongues. Blah, blah, blah. To maintain the delusion of grandeur that what is not real has a reality, which is dualistic. Again, right? The moment that there's going to be the biggest argument is like, well, You are all saying the same thing. I'm like, I'm not saying anything at all. There's nothing being said here because this is just words. But this is almost like a word assassin. There's purposely being used, words being used to express, to transparently express that there are no words. Words are all created. Words are all dead. So there is a fear of acceptance that it's really nothing. So it wishes that it is something else that encompasses everything, like God or source or self or the higher self. I really laugh at the self because there is no self, but it becomes real when it becomes capitalized. It becomes, well, there's a capital S there, you know, it must be real. Then it becomes just this confusion. So what is being avoided is what is obvious. The obvious is that this is all made up, but it feels real. But what is made up and what feels real cannot really be put into words. So there's a coming up of words to maintain that there is truth. But for truth to happen, there has to be not true. So that's, again, dualistic. So the fake self resonates with whatever will maintain its fakery when there's fake resonance. Resonance simply is the resonance that it can't, it's like a blackout. It's like, I don't know what I'm resonating with. I cannot put it into words. Or when there's a glimpse, it cannot manufacture words of what it is, but somehow it tries to best explain it in words. It communicates what cannot be spoken. It tries to express what cannot be expressed. It says in words what is cannot be captured by words. The obstacle to this unconditional freedom that cannot be talked about are words. And words become belief system. Words all of a sudden have hierarchies. Or even, like apparent, masters or something. There are no masters, just a word. Will come up with this, there is nothing but only supreme reality. But that's just a bunch of made up words. Although we will say that there's no separation, they will say that there's only the absolute. But that's a belief system in words again. That's just an imaginary friend to maintain that it's not real by making something real, by making something like an absolute reality. So since this is like an open invitation to see that this is perfection, that there's nothing wrong or right about words, they're just appearances. But trying to grasp, trying to hold on to words, or trying to say that everything is just the same thing. You're saying the same thing as this. No, this is not saying anything at all. This is just an expression that there's already completion. It's already done. I used to say that, there was so much clarity that somehow when speaking happens, it muddies what's already clear. What's already clear is that let's just kind of like, let's just use words to assassinate some words. If you were standing in a corner and then if something, flying hit your head completely and all of a sudden there are no more words, would you know what separation is? Would you know what freedom is? Would you know anything at all? No. There are no words. But words are appearances. That's neither right or wrong, neither real or unreal. It's nothing at all, but it's also everything. Sorry, that went a little bit long. If you have any questions, please go ahead. And then later on, maybe after an hour or more, I'm going to turn off the recording so that people can just ask questions without being recorded. Are we out of words now? Hello, Petra.
Hi, Emerson.
Hello.
Something technical. What is it with my video? It started like last week that it gets so funny.
Oh, it's weird. Oh, there you go.
Yeah, I saw it with with
That's
Adriana.
awesome.
She also had.
You're becoming nothing and everything. Look at that. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, maybe it's because I have COVID.
Oh no.
Okay.
That's okay. I'm going to you can just speak without the video. That's okay. That's all right. That was quite trippy though.
You know, maybe because I asked if we can have a part without
yeah,
recording.
yeah, I saw
so,
that. Thank you. Yeah.
So thank you so much. So now the video got blurry that I'm not recognized. Okay. I will ask something later. I first have to eat.
No worries. No worries.
Thank you.
Thank you. You can also, oh yeah, there's a question here. Sorry. If you also want to type your question, you can also go ahead with that one. There's a question here. Thank you so much, Emerson. That was really brilliant. I have nothing really left to say. That was spot on. I was circling in words, and I think that did it. Thank you. I guess that's not a question. Thank you. You're welcome. I guess that was really nothing. So what is being suggested is to go with the theme of this day, which is the rise and fall of the empire of words, is the mythology of words. In the story, seemingly, there was a perfect error in this unknowable perfection that suggested a mistake, a word made real, a you, an I, a we, an individual, consciousness, awareness, God, all of the words above. Since there is simply not two, there are no such things as words, but somehow words are being utilized to uproot the weeds of separation that appears as a structure, concepts, ideas, the world, reality, God, the universe. They're just a bunch of words. And the tricky part is the word resonance. The resonance is not in the words. It is the absence of words. It is the absence of meaning, like a blackout of words, empty words. What is resonating is energetic, for a lack of better term, because words will never get you anywhere except back in words. It's the inexplicable, cannot be understood. It is the shutdown of the creation of words. Seemingly, when resonance becomes hijacked by a belief system made up of words cleverly designed by the illusory self. Self is just a word, by the way, to maintain its reality by resonating with a bigger word, with a grander version of itself as the higher self, as a source, as a creator, awareness, consciousness, even nothing. So word in small caps again thinks it will be liberated when it becomes aware of itself as a new and improvised, capitalized, self-important word. It is a secret desire to be real because the self is not real. It desires itself to be real in a grander version, like God. It's just like daddy issues. Or the I am God trip. A trip made up of words. Not only I am a real self, but I'm also a God. And even though it's being suggested that there's no self, then there is the self with the higher S. There's nothing wrong or right about words. Simply, the moment you think that separation, it's not two. So every single thought is separation. Every single word is an entrapment, meaning there's never been a single thought or words that is real. Again, since real is just a word, you can't even say unreal because that's just another word. Since the source of the thoughts, the thinker, is just another thought, so the unreal self will, of course, resonate with illusory stuff because it repositions itself as real. Since resonance becomes a position and will only see other positions as a threat and defends its fake resonance as its compass. It's like true north, another position. Basically, I am right and you are wrong. And it is now quick to point out apparent other's position. There is no position. Position is just a word. There are no ideas. There is no awareness, or there's no nothing, or whatever is being expressed as absent is neither a false statement or a true statement. It's not arriving at anything. It's just exposing the obviousness that words are non-existent. Because existence is just a word. Simply not two. It cannot be caught up in a word. It cannot be caught up in ideas about what is real and not real, because that is separation. There's nothing wrong with separation, but it's just an idea. It's just a made-up word. So words that become a prominent driving force in seeking gets backed up by a resonance, but who's really resonating? Is a word just resonating with the bigger word to maintain its reality by making up another hyper reality like consciousness or awareness? It's just another belief system. It's backed up by an absolute, but absolute is just another fictionalized word. It's all made up. It's all made up. Even when you're sure, who is sure though? Even when there is this undeniable expression that this is what I feel is true. This is from the heart. This is what I feel deeply in my soul. But let's expose it. What is a heart is just another word. What is a soul is just another word. It's just a separate idea to maintain reality, to maintain a truth. The you can't handle the truth because the truth is there's no such thing as anything that can be thought of. Truth is just another idea. And the you can't handle the truth is because that you are not even real. The you makes up a whole bunch of these ideas to maintain its reality. And it just goes in circle. It's just a flurry of words that crashes back and forth, thinking that it has a position when there is no such thing as location. There is no certainty. There's no figuring out. There's no realizing this. How can a self realize itself when there's no self to begin with? How can it point at something when it's just pointing back at words? Words pointing to another word. Words maintaining the word. Words reinforcing more words. And when words trigger you, or there's a defense with words, then who's being triggered? Who is rejecting words, or who's even accepting words? The rejection and acceptance is a movement. Words are movements. What's being suggested is simply not two. How can there be movements when there's not two? How can be a to and from when there's not two? How can there be ideas when there's not two? How can even there be a discussion when there's no two? But seemingly this is happening. There's a discussion about what is. And what is, no matter how much it tries to express what is through words, can never be expressed, even by calling it what is. Because the moment what is thought of, it becomes something like, well, he's talking about the same thing as awareness. He's talking about the same thing as consciousness. He's talking about the same thing as whatever seems to appear. I'm not talking about anything. I'm just exposing the fallacy, the obviousness that words will not lead you to anything. Because the words that you very cling on to, that you think that will liberate you, is what maintains you. And the desire to see its own absence through words, it's just the word just jumps to another word. It becomes the self. It's all the self. It's all the thing. But who's thinking of that? What movement? Waves of deception. There's nothing wrong or right about deception and waves, just play. But when there is a play that's made real, like a play of word that made real, then it becomes a realization, something that I got. Oftentimes, there's going to be a seeing that there is nothing happening. But when it becomes captured, that the I steps in. It steps in and takes over, and it becomes, my understanding is this. My definition, my resonance. It's just such a tricky word. I have arrived that this is whatever. So again, what is being expressed here, although it's being expressed in words, is that the expression in words will not get you anywhere. It's the seeing through what's being expressed here. It's hearing the silence in all of these words. It's seeing that there is no separation except in words. It's seeing that without thoughts, there is simply nothing possible, like separation or mistakes. um, I keep on going over time, with the introduction. Thank you so much, everyone. Question here. Hi, Emerson. Thank you for possibly the clearest couple of hours in the history of talk about non-duality. The first session was the bomb. I came here to debate you, but all my words failed me now. You have disarmed with your laughter and the sharpest talk I've ever heard. All I have was my belief. Thank you. No, thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you. If you want to talk about that, please go ahead. Or not. So welcome everyone to the 3-day event called Timeless Aliveness. Now for an introduction. So apparently, in the past year or so, although nothing has ever really been said or nothing has really happened in this timeless aliveness, there has been a passionate illumination through words to express this energetic silence that cannot be spoken of. This energy, this aliveness, this timelessness, this unknowingness, this radiance, this emptiness that's unknowable does not really require any introduction or even a discussion, because this is already obvious. Because what is being expressed is unspeakable, although this communication is often called non-duality. Non-duality is what is being expressed, but there's no such thing as non-duality. There's no such thing as non-duality communication. The simple and most direct definition of the undefinable non-duality is simply not two, which really suggests that it cannot be communicated because there's no subject or object. There's no speaker. There's no listener. There's no seeker. There's nothing. Apparently, non-duality's apparent roots came from Advaita's monistic suggestion that there's only a singularity without division, or there's only Brahman and the rest is illusion, which is rooted from Hinduism. However, this communication also appears in Zen, Christian mysticism, Lao Tzu, and many, many others that are really belief systems. In recent times, although there's no time, what is supposed to be without division is apparently being expressed as multiple interpretations that are contradictory to each other. Madness, isn't it? The most popular amongst many variations outside of spiritual and practice-based non-duality seemingly stems from two. There's a satsang-based self-inquiry, direct pointing, which is often led by a teacher or a guru who have realized, transcended, often labeled as awakened masters or sages or enlightened teachers, or mystics. So the attractive non-dual teachings are proliferated by seekers who are seeking the ultimate attainment of the non-dual state, enlightenment. But there's no such thing. Seemingly, I'm going to answer that I'm good. I'm gonna finish the introduction first. Sorry, I'll answer that in a bit. Sorry. I know there's a lot of excitement in this. Um, so seemingly about 20 years ago, there's this open secret communication that was the catalyst and a radical departure from that spiritual confinement of non-dualistic expression, spoken in a somewhat in a more accessible to modern set of seekers audience that seems to have really increased during the internet, Zoom, pandemic, and it's beginning to segue into the AI era. This direct communication is an uncompromising message that is both fundamental, simply not to, and also asserting that there's no one. Simply there's no one because it's simply no two. The message seemingly demystifies the mythology of separation by asserting the obvious. This is all that there is. It's just this. And exposes the meaninglessness of words by utilizing a rigid, uncompromising way of speaking that apparently exhausts the seeker into oblivion by not feeding the narrative, often resulting in a glimpse or clarity of what is, and nothing really happens. So this speaker started as a teacher and seemingly is speaking about nothing at all. But lately, and this is just a story, this doesn't really matter. I had the opportunity to speak to both audiences because I had to cancel a whole bunch of in-person meetings. So I was communicating with an audience basically that was coming from the satsang group, which is usually from a sangha of a belief system that is usually rooted in spirituality, Hinduism, non-duality. And there was also another group that was been listening to this radical, uncompromising communication. With utmost respect for all speakers and all of the teachers that has courage to speak in razor sharp clarity, that is just this, that seems to obliterate any fog or any confusion of what is. What seems to happen when there is this, this duality in this communication is that there seems to be this confusion. Oh, sorry. I'm gonna answer that in a moment. Sorry, I know. Yeah, I'll answer that. Sorry. I hope you don't mind the long intro. Just trying to set up something that does not really need some setting up. I don't know where I was. So yeah, so there's this usual kind of like, there's this communication, which is based on awareness, consciousness, that there is just awareness. You can call it, unaware. I can't really remember the words, and there's also this other side, which is there's no me. Again, with respect to both, there is just this. And what this is cannot really be communicated. But the seeming difference between the two is there's seemingly a belief system that is rooted in the most fundamental existence of a character. The fundamental existence of a character usually roots from a source, usually roots from a belief that this is a creation. And the opposite side of the coin, there is this seeming uncertainty. No position, there's nothing to know, there's no source, there's no belief system. It's just this. And there seems to be a going back and forth. I talk to a lot of people that have been seeking for a long time in radical non-duality, also seeking for a long time in spiritual based or applied non-duality, and they seem to have similarities that is being noticed. What seems to happen is that whatever they are believing or whatever they are disbelieving is held onto as the truth, is held onto as the ultimate, is held onto as the absolute. And there's nothing wrong or right in positions. It's just what is. It's just what is. But what's being spoken about here is neither a belief or a non-belief system. What's being spoken about here is neither about awareness or no me, because there's no such thing as awareness or no me. It's just this. So in that communication with the group in one group, the two groups in one group, it kept on running into this, this seeming obstacles in words. And if you were here in the last 3 days that I did, we talked about, or no one talked about, the dissolution of words, the tumbling of all the words that is held onto as just a narrative, as not having any meaning, not having any purpose, because every single word is made up. Since simply there's no two, everything that has been spoken about, regardless of what style of communication, are all made up. So the seeming stuckness in both camps are in words, and the words that seemingly holds the idea that they're almost there, that there is a getting of this. It doesn't matter if a person is coming from the awareness thing that, they're practicing being aware of consciousness, or tuning inwards, or listening to what seems to be, resonating. Or it could be the opposite, which is the seeing through all of that as just another illusion. But who is seeing through all of this? If there's no me, if there's no awareness, what is it then? So what's being expressed here in the next 3 days is that the message of this is not a message. This is just a simplification of a word, and really just using this that cannot be spoken about as a reset, as an empty word that does not have any meaning. There seeming to be a stuckness in awareness or nothing being everything, but both are words. So what is being expressed is this is inexpressible. The words about this are just words. This appears as the silence in every word, but there is no word that can capture this. This cannot be captured in words. So seemingly, even though there is really no assertion here, there's nothing really to figure out and everything, the words that are synonymous to this unspeakableness is unknowable, wordless, not two, without an opposite, wholeness, unconditional freedom, nothingness, aliveness, boundlessness. So even if these words seemingly kind of like seems to have a somewhat of a resonance, who's resonating? It's not about knowing all of these words. It's the unknowing of all of these words. These words are just markers of something that cannot be spoken about. It does not really have a meaning or purpose. When I was speaking to that group, because we were doing all of this, the word this almost became a blackout word, or a stop sign of all the thoughts. It's a reconciliation of the imagined estrangement of separation that is seemingly caused by words. Words that seemingly are very important seems to lose its meaning. So it's almost like that there's a hypnosis that happens with words that are held onto, that are belief systems that are seemingly held onto as something that can liberate. But there are no words that can liberate. This character has been writing a preface and been revising it over and over and over and over and over and over. I'm up to Ileana. I'm up to 5 revisions now. Because there seems to be no introduction to what cannot really be introduced. And the words are just basically obstacles to this energeticness, this aliveness that cannot really be captured in words. And what seems to be expressed and exposed is that even throughout this 3 days of this assertion that there's nothing happening, even if it feels like it's happening completely. What's being suggested is the completion or the wholeness of statements, kind of like when someone's saying that there's no one here, even if it feels absolutely real. There's no time, but it feels like time is going because it's the same. It can't neither be this or that. It's just this. It encompasses everything that seems to be happening and not happening. Because what seems to be understood sometimes, and there's nothing wrong with it, there's nothing wrong or right, even when it's being expressed that nothing being everything, it tries to follow that logic. There's no logic in it. There's no meaning in it. It's the same thing as saying as aware of being aware. That's dualistic. Because the moment that the character, although there's no character, even if it feels absolutely real, steps into that ideology of nothing, it tries to process what nothing is, but it cannot be processed. It tries to understand something that can never be understood. It tries to grasp something that cannot be grasped. And by grasping words, it's just pointless. So what's the point of this intro? Nothing. So what's being expressed here that this is absolutely nothing. Although it means something, or there's a confusion of what, if there's a point. There's no point to anything at all. That there's no seeking really happening here. Although it feels like there's a seeking that's happening. So what's being expressed here is that in the next 3 days, it's just be an expression of this timeless aliveness that cannot be captured in words, although words are going to be said. So again, what this is not words. What this is not an understanding. What this is not a meeting, although it feels like this is being expressed in words in a meeting. I'm going to answer some questions because there's a whole bunch of questions that's coming up here. There's no point to this intro at all. And that's the point. There's no point in seeking and something that's already here. There's no point in trying to figure out what's being said here when it's already expressed. There's another question here. Can you talk about, what's that? Sorry. Can you talk about eternity? It can't really be talked about eternity because this is happening in time. And this is also timeless. Eternity is something that is an idea of some time, of time going on forever. But there's no time to go on forever because this is already what is. Question here. How long are these? Oh, yeah, these meetings are about 2 hours, and there's a break in between for an hour, and then there's another meeting. So for three 2-hour meetings per day. Yeah. So if you have any questions, please go ahead. You can also ask a question by raising your hand. It has come down to this. When words are just completely meaningless and it just really doesn't matter. It's just basically an expression that this is just this. So this is already complete. Although it feels like there's something lacking, this is already what is. And what is, it's not a philosophy, it's not it can't be defined, it cannot be known. Is this also part of the illusion? Okay, that's a good question there. So this, what's being expressed, is neither this or not this. The words is just basically trying to express that it's all this. But all of this that is seemingly happening is not also happening. So what you think and what you cannot think about is this. What you see and what you cannot see is this. For example, what seems to be happening in a vision is that there is solidity, there's separation and everything, but it misses the space that appears. The space that appears is always there, but it's invisible. So this is the visible and the invisible. This is the what is said and what is not said. This is what is heard and what is not heard. This is just everything and nothing. So this is the simultaneousness of everything, or everything happening all at once, but not the thinking of it or not the thinking of it. It's just this. So this is basically expressing that there's nothing separate. So the intro basically was just this seeming kind of like duality, non-duality, and basically expressing it that there is no this or that. It's just this. The separation is only in the perception of it all. Yeah. The separation is just this and missing this, but nothing is really being missed in this. There's just a perceiving that there's something that's missed and it's something that is seen. But there is a spontaneity in everything that is happening without the perceiver. So there's this seeming kind of like division, which is the thinking or the thoughts in this vastness of silence. And this seeming division appears as words, as thoughts, as ideas, but there's just this openness in everything, which is just this. So when what is being expressed is just this, it's both. It's the sound and the silence simultaneously appearing like this, infinitely unraveling. So what's being suggested is in complete and total darkness, where there's nowhere to go, when everything is lost and there's nothing to gain. In the absence of seemingly certainties, in the lack of positions, the transparency and the meaninglessness of words, even this is it falls apart. And what is does not stop. As it is doesn't have any meaning when movement and stillness are equally the same, because they're just made up of words. The real and unreal are united. The sound and the silence, I was about to say the sound of silence, are heard and unheard. There's no doing and not doing, asleep and awake, personal and impersonal, duality and non-duality. Words are not words. There's a seeming infinite unraveling. There's an infinite stillness simultaneously, but it can't be felt, it cannot be figured out, because the one that's trying to figure out is just a word that infinitely unravels. Like a vivid dream, when everything is thought to be real, in the moment of awakeness, there is just this infinite unraveling of what seemed to be true or what seemed to be false is a blank, is a dot, dot, dot. Is unknown, even it feels that it's known. When there's no more anchors, the ship sails. When there's longing that is unknown, what is it longing for? What is it seeking? What is it searching? When words fail to convey what is going on, or is it even going on without a word? Is it really happening, or is not really happening? When both fall apart, as it seems, when the questions rise and fall, because the answers leads to more questions that also rises and falls. It's like there's no more acceptance or rejection. because accepting means coming into a conclusion, or rejecting also comes to a conclusion. When conclusions is just a destination, when there's just this surprise, there's really no destination to this. When there's clarity, and even in bouts of confusion, is the sameness, the ups and downs, the this is it, this is not it, is the same. So what's being suggested is that it can't be suggested, because what's being suggested does not appear, but it's felt at the same time. But what is it really? When the rise and fall of the words seems to happen always, but there's this lingering ideas that seems to connect things like a continuous flow. But the continuous flow seems to be broken when words are not used, but it's not really broken because it's infinitely unraveling. This infinite unraveling is just a flow. And that's even saying so much, because a flow becomes an idea of what should flow and what should not flow. I often talk to people that seemingly have dropped away. And what seems to have dropped away was the never was. So unexpectedly, there could be days of like hooray, and there could be days of just crying for no reason at all. But what was always clear was there was nothing that was ever figured out. Because when it thinks that it figures it out, it always unravels infinitely. It never sticks. Nothing ever sticks. Although there's really nothing for it to stick to. It's like this open river that just keeps on flowing. It never dries out. Sometimes it thinks that it is stuck. Sometimes it thinks that it's not stuck. Again, this infinite unraveling with no reason or purpose, which is also infinitely still, cannot be captured in thoughts, in words and meanings or destinations. And the words that are seemingly flowing through here are completely and utterly meaningless. But somehow there is a feeling of meaning. Somehow there's a feeling of purpose. But when the words that appears, try to label what is going on, then it disintegrates completely again. But what it doesn't notice is that the coming and going, because the coming and going are not really real, but it's also not real. It's just a flow. And this infinitely unraveling, it's like the unspooling of something that does not really have a beginning or does not really have an end. So this unspooling or unraveling is this continuous motion of stillness. And it can't be captured in a thought. How could complete stillness be moving? How can timelessness seem to appear in segments of time? How can questions and answers just always comes back as words? So again, what is feared of is that darkness, that unknown, that uncertainty, where you and I meet and disintegrate. Because there's no you and I in darkness or in complete blackout. So this blackout or this unknowingness is absent of any thoughts or words or ideas, or even any feelings. Even feelings of certainty that this is what I feel, this is what rings true to me, simply unravels. It topples down. It's free falling. It's fresh and new. But when you think what fresh and new is, then it stops there again. When you think what is stillness, it sticks there again. But it's always unraveling. Stillness is always unraveling. The silence is always sounding. So when it's just this that cannot be figured out. And no one knows anything because there's no the moment that it knows it, it creates a separation in something that's not really separated. Because separation is just an idea, it's just a word. And you are just the idea and the word that keeps on coming up in this unraveling infinity. If you have any questions, let's unravel them and hopefully kind of like illuminate that there's always nothing and not even nothing, that's just a word. So thank you again for coming to this second day. I got a whole bunch of questions that I'm going to address in the next meeting. I just really wanted to open with this unraveling in hopes that what's being suggested is not heard. But go ahead. And cheers. And the chat is open. Sorry, I did not see that. Hi, Emerson. You always mention in all of your talks that it's already done. What do you mean by that? This is already unraveling. So whatever you think you need to get to is already done, meaning that it's already, it can never be pinpointed at. It can never get to it because it's always this and there's nothing outside of this unraveling. You can also say that all that there is this. But the moment that you think what this is, it unravels into this infinite this. And this infinite this is always this. Whatever it is always this. So trying to capture that and saying that this is it, trying to label it, putting in a box and trying to figure it out. The moment that you think that you have grabbed it, the moment that you think that you have mastered it or come to a conclusion, it unravels. It disintegrates. It disappears. Thank you for this talk, Emerson. Yesterday, while I was walking, all the words that were rising up just seemed to vanish. And I can't come up with anything anymore. And it's nice to listen to this, but there's nothing coming up anymore. Thank you. There's nothing that was done. It was just basically an illumination that just words are just words. Hi, I think that someone pointed it out yesterday about the felt sense. Can you describe more about this felt sense? Sure, yeah. Again, you know what? There's always going to be this movement and stillness simultaneously seemingly happening. So there's going to be this stillness and the movement is this illusion of movement, this felt sense of, but I feel it. And that, but I feel it, or, you know, what rings through, or what, you know, that I'm moving through time and space is the movement in stillness. There's nothing wrong or right about that. It's neither true or not true. It's just this felt sense. And there's just a naming of it as a claiming of it as my felt sense of separation. But again, if you take away the my and the felt sense, or the word separation, it's just simply what is. There's really no mystery to it. If you take out all the words, there's really not even a paradox when the words don't create a barrier of what is and what isn't, or trying to figure out what seems to be moving simultaneously and stillness at the same time. Because it just really breaks the mind that there's no mind, because you can't think of something, because the mind can only think in movements, like a felt sense, reality. It always will need an opposite to be able to go in a direction. But when it's given a conundrum, like this is moving stillness, it can't seem to, it tries to figure it out. It tries to understand, or tries to embody it, but there's no body. Tries to perceive it, but what is trying to be perceived cannot be thought of, because it's impossible. Meaning that in a lack of, when there's no explanation, it's simply it as it is. There's nothing wrong with, with this, but the wrong and right is created by thinking what this is and what it should be. What do you mean when you say movement and stillness are the same? Thank you for doing this talk. It's really helpful, but I'm getting really confused. Again, you know what? Going back into what I was saying before, thank you for that. It's like a nice segue to what I was talking about. Movement and stillness are just words. So we think that there's only either stillness or movement. So the direction of the way that, trying to perceive this or grab this is either or. It cannot put, two together as simply not two, meaning that there's no opposites. There's not just stillness and not just movements, because that's coming into a destination or or this or that. So when it's lifted, you know what I'm saying? Nothing was lifted because nothing was separating it. When the seeming illusion of opposites or a preferred state seems to be seen as just equally the same, then whatever is this is movement, and this is also stillness at the same time, but it can't be thought about. I'm not sure if that answered it, but it is that nothing is seen. Nothing has ever been seen. To imply a witness is to imply a separation of simply not two. What is seen cannot be called as something that is seen with the absence of thoughts or words. What is seen is a deception of trying to figure out what is. An example, there's a seeing of colors, but there are no colors. What is seen creates this images, visual impairment that there is something separate. So when what is seen is labeled as two, as a word, as trees, as oceans, as sky, as you, I, others, simply there is a suggestion that what is separated by vision, aided by words, aided by feelings, aided by a separateness. What is being suggested is that there is no such thing as an awareness that is seeing, that is feeling, that is separating and what is cannot be separated. The simplicity of what's being talked about cannot really be manufactured in words, cannot be processed as thoughts, cannot be secured by vision. In the absence of words, in the absence of thoughts, in the absence of everything, what is seen is not a solidity, because solidity is just a word. What is seen is not this or that, because that's just a subject and object illusion. Subject and objects are just words. What is seen is not true or not true or false, because that's just another indication that there is a separate reality. What is seen as not reality, because what it implies is that there is someone that sees reality, which causes this idea of separation. There's nothing wrong or right about reality or non-reality, but there's just ideas. They're just floating expressions on something that is undivided. What is seen is also an intoxication in colors, in sights, in visuals that creates this felt sense of separation. Although everything is just being suggested, without the word like suggestion or paradox or mystery, it just remains something that cannot be said. It remains something that cannot be explained. So when there's a seemingly first account of seeing what is, it usually is expressed in this floral language that is, I don't know how many times I've used this word in this past, it's orgasmic or something that is transcendent, something that is just like, oh, wow, you know, and it's just this exploration of something that is not seen. Because the very seeing, the very eye that sees it or the self that sees it is non-existent. It's like having a nighttime dream, and everything in the nighttime dream is exposed as, this is what I saw in the dream, but omitting the part that it's a dream. Omitting the part that, you know, that it was just something that it cannot be thought about because it's not really real. So it expresses reality in a series of words aided by visuals, the glimmering, the radiance, whatever seems to come as words. It's like a show and tell of something that cannot be shown and told. And there's nothing wrong or right about that. It's just an appearance. But once it's being expressed as just an appearance, is there reality to the appearance? If reality is nothing but a word, is there an appearance if there's no witness to it? Is there a happening when it's not happening to anyone? Is this it when no one could figure out what's it? So what is being expressed is this inexpressible, the seeing this appearing as little boxes, appearing as little apparent faces. Here's another thing. But are faces really being seen without the label of a face? Are individuals actually being seen without the word individuals? Are eyes being seen without the word eyes? Are there separate eyes? Is there a seer and a seen? Is there a seeing even? What's being seen? Is it really just blindness? Blindness appearing as vision? Is it really just empty appearing as this fullness? The colorless appearing as colors? Is it just really a dream-like intoxication, swirling colors and movements, and it's all just really stillness? Well, that cannot be answered, because to answer it is to create another series of words and trying to maintain what this is, that is blindly being seen by the seer, that is just not seeing. Again, seeing creates this two. I see you, but am I really seeing you? Is there an I or a you? Is there a witnessing to this? Is there an observer? So when the I, the seer, the seeing is just a delusion, it creates this greater awareness. There's an all-seeing, all-encompassing, absolute awareness. But that, again, is just an imaginative interpretation of something that cannot see. The blind leading the blind. When it's all blindness, does it really matter to see or not to see what is being expressed here? If there's only a singular, would it even have an opposite? Would it be able to see itself if there's no separation? Would it be possible to see? I see. There's nothing to see here. Do you really see when you close your eyes or you open your eyes? Or both illusion? Is everything that's moving really moving? Is there's just this dynamic, energetic flow? That's a bunch of words, again, trying to express something that cannot be expressed, of something that is invisible, indivisible. How can the whole see itself? It doesn't need to see itself. What are these sensations that seems to appear when it sees like the great mountain or the peak of something or the great wide open sky? Or this expression that lights up, when it sees someone that it loves? Does it just see itself, or is it just another dream? Is it just another appearance of something that cannot be figured out? So it creates this visual aid on trying to be a witness to itself. Or is it trying to witness something that's not real to maintain its reality? Or does it create this separation, this separate visual, although it's an impairment, to secure its reality? So what is being suggested when there's simply not two is the really reality? So it's the reality in what is seen. It's the reality in what is seeing. It's the reality in subject and object. Haha. When the very essence of reality is questioned, everything seems to appear or not appear is questionable. But let's I'll have some questions if you would like to explore this. Please go ahead. Hi, Emerson. This is like a liquidation sale. First, you take out the words and now division. What's next? Nothing. Oh, hearing. It's the same thing as words. Yeah. The auditory, everything that's heard or unheard, words that seemingly appear are just created by more words, words that seem to appear as chatter, words that appear as conversations, whatever is spoken, whatever is unspoken, that is thought of as words, just comes out as just this narrative of something that cannot be told. Back, apparently. Record. Oh, yes, it's recording. So what's being expressed is the title of this 3-day event, Timeless Aliveness, is infinitely awake. It does not need awareness. It does not need knowing. It does not need anything because it always is. So this wide awakeness, even when there is seemingly dreaming. So dreaming of being awake while sleeping. It's this duality that's really not a duality that's appearing as this or that. So meaning that this is a play of opposites, but there's really no opposites. It's like the eyes being wide open while seeing the illusion inside. It is looking inside a separate lens, looking inside that it's blinded by its own optical illusions. There's really nothing that's going on, but there's this seeming happening that is very convincing. There's really nothing that's being said, but there's a reverberation of echoes of silence by hearing what is not, or by believing what is not. Even when its perception is challenged, for example, it goes deeper only inside to maintain its own blindness by looking at what is, by comparing it to what is not. So this radiant aliveness, awakeness, pierces through that illusion and basically shows that it's just what it is without opposites. So there is nothing to figure out. There's nothing to know because what is already is appearing simultaneously. This two-ness is just an illusion that is appearing as, sorry, I'm just going to mute. I hope that's okay. So there's two-ness basically is what seems to be appearing. The moment that the I am experiencing this, it pierces through this illusion into two-ness, that I am having this experience of time and space, that I am moving through time and space, that I am real, that I'm hearing voices, that I'm seeing things. But all of this seemingly, and this is just a suggestion because there's really no internal or external, is seemingly happening internally, meaning that everything that is happening, being visually or auditory or anything at all, is happening inside, but there's really no inside. So everything is an illusion from the perceiver's perception. Your whole existence and even all of your perception exist internally. So the kicker is that there's really no internal. So your image of you, your image of others, your physicality, everything is all made up inside. But inside is also made up because there's no inside or outside. So seemingly what is seen from this perspective, from the eye, is opposite. It's actually going inwards. So it's seeing in the dark. Again, this is just a suggestion. There's no truth to any of this. This is just to reveal what is always illuminated. So if this is the eye and it sees everything outside as inside, what is behind it? Nothing. So if the eye is open from both sides, it's seeing, well, there's no both sides really, right? Because it's just, so what it's seeing is that whatever is seen here is also empty. But from the perceiver, when there's an eye, when I see it, I'm seeing it from my personal view, but there's no personal view. It's an impersonal view. What it's being missed is like the blinder basically, or the blindness that seems to happen is really hidden by the seer. For example, there's a thought that there's something behind that's looking. But the thought of behind is just a thought, meaning there's no reality to it. So what's being seen, if it's seen wholly, meaning that the separation that is seen actually is not separate. For example, what's being seen right now, for example, if you're looking out, is there's a space between your eye and the screen. But when it's seen that there's no seer, that space between the eye is actually whole. There's just a perception that there's an empty space, but there's no such thing as an empty space. When it's seeing, for example, there's this veil of separation, and that veil actually is you. So you think that you're the seer. But when the seer is seen through, that there's really no one seeing, there's no one behind, there's no subject and object, the separation collapses because it's just a thought. So there's a thought of what it's seeing. It's almost like there's a filtering of what's being seen as solid. This is a cup. This is a glass. There's Katriana and Zabi and Susie. But that's just being seen from this perception, this lens of separation that sees separate. It's like an AI. It's like this artificial intelligence that automatically labels what is as something that is either Susie or Katriana or Emerson. But what's behind it, since there's nothing behind, is just, it's like looking through a blinder and everything that you're seeing is shadows. But if you pull up the blinder, it's just empty. It's quite trippy. It's quite trippy. So this is already wholeness. But the trick is, people are going to be asking me, so what are you seeing? How come I don't see that? What you're actually seeing is what is already. It's already whole and complete. It is what is already. But there's just a labeling, a recognition, a stamping that this is blue, this is black, this is light, this is a space, this is chair, there's a thing. So what is happening is actually what is just what ising. Without any words, without any labels, without any connection to what is visually seen, it is already what is. For example, like this, okay, let's go into some territory here. The moment that there is a seeing, for example, we were talking about this in the earlier thing, the moment that there is a grasping, for example, when there is this false sense of enlightenment that it announces that I am God. It's seeing a delusion, basically, because it stamps everything, and it's quite trippy, because what is being seen is God and not God simultaneously. What is being seen is what is and what isn't simultaneously. What is being seen is this and that simultaneously. But really, what's being expressed is just all this. It's all this and nothing but this. But the seeming observation or the witnessing or the awareness is creating this illusion that there is an internal and an external, and what's being seen internally is actually external. But if you lift the blinders, you lift the lens, it's just this. There's no such thing as opposites, but what's being seen is opposites according to you. But you is just a lens. You is just an illusion. There's nothing wrong or right about the illusion. It's just what is. It's like wearing a shades of separation. You're like, oh, there is this and there's that, but without that shade, it's blind. Because how can a whole see itself? It will never see itself. It's blind to itself. Because it only sees this. But this without a label is always going to be just this, and there's no separation whatsoever. So what's being expressed, it's already this. There's no special optical thing that this is seeing that's not the same as whatever is being seen. The only difference is there's a belief that it's seeing and it's missing, but what's being seen is also unseen simultaneously. So that's it. It is already seen. It is already this. It's already exposed. If you have any questions, please go ahead. Betty.
Did you have that background this morning?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I can't get over the background. I'm just sitting here, maybe because I'm in the dark, and before I was outside and it was really bright. I'm like, the background is really trippy.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, it's amazing. Okay.
I like it because it's almost like, with what's being talked about, it's almost like there's this prism, right? When a prism hits, it becomes this multiple colors, but it's really nothing.
No, it's got all these dimensions to it,
Yeah.
like a prism. A prism has like what? How many dimensions to the
Not
prism?
really sure.
12, 144. I don't even know.
I don't know. Yeah.
But that's kind of feeling you get from it.
Yeah.
The way you did the shading and everything. It's really, really awesome. Okay, bye-bye. Bye-bye. I try.
That was trippy what was said. I blanked out there. Yeah, because it's almost like that there is this unquestioning of what's being seen as some reality. But what's being seen is the unreal and real simultaneously appearing as this, just this. So when it's being said that what's being longed for is already appearing, it's already this. It's just seemingly not seen because the invisible is appearing as visible, as shadows, basically. So there's this witnessing of shadows, and it misses what is around, what is this. So it's seeing this form, and it does not see the space. But this form is actually formless. If you take the most powerful visual aid to take a look at what you're looking, it's always going to be nothing. So this is 99.99% empty space. It is true, yeah. Isn't it funny that without the space, there would be no form, and vice versa? Exactly. It's the same thing that was being expressed earlier, right? Without the seeming suffering, without the bliss, there's no suffering. Without the suffering, there's no bliss. It is the same. It's appearing simultaneously. But there's a choosing seemingly to latch on to what is moving. It misses the whole picture. It's focused on the shadows. It misses the whole thing. Marcy goes, it's like the silence between the notes. Yes, exactly. Without the silence, there will be no notes. There'll be no orchestra. There'll be no melody. There'll just be silence. So looking for silence or trying to hear silence is impossible because it already is. You don't have to hear it. It is already. Longing for peace is already. It's already appearing. It cannot disappear because it's permanently this. So the permanence and the impermanent are appearing simultaneously. How do you come up with this? I don't actually. There's just this clarity, right? There's this clarity that that cannot really be, it's really hard to speak about. So there's an attempt to speak about something that is so obvious without the thoughts, without the words. It's so obvious that this duality is actually non-duality. But there's no such thing as duality or non-duality. It's just this. There was there was this really funny when I was walking around one day, it was just, I'm like, this is all, you know, the visual kind of like thing that's happening, right? It's when it's almost like when the dark and light is simultaneously happening, there's just this belief, right? It's kind of like, okay, this is really empty and it's looking like it's fullness. This is empty and it's full simultaneously, but the apparent lens, you know what I'm saying, can only see one thing, but it misses the other. So this is awakeness and blindness simultaneously appearing. The invisible, visible. The visible, invisible. The seen and the unseen. The real and the unreal. The spiritual and the material. But there's no material and there's no spiritual. It's just simultaneously. Yeah. It's the same. The me and the no me. The you and the not you. A puff of smoke with no smoke. Yeah. So what's being suggested is apparently seeking is like child's play of role playing of an imaginary seeker that is lost, but it's all just fantasy. It's child's play. Like thinking that the imagined seeker has been walking in the desert for 40 years, trying to find the promised land or the hope of paradise. But it's just been really walking in circles in a sandlot, looking for marbles of wisdom, punishing itself by going back and forth on the monkey bar, concentrating on the monkey bar, being aware of the rides, going to the opposite sides of the seesaw, going up and down, building sand castles, only to destroy them by tripping over them in a makeshift dystopia. There's no utopia and there's no dystopia. It's just a sandlot. In deep sleep, all of these ideas about utopia or dystopia is abandoned completely. Seemingly, there's no next day, but the next day, the adventure continues. Maybe this time it's going to another fantasy of high sea adventures, longing for the stillness in the deepest ocean, but gets caught up, chasing waves after waves, looking for that perfect wave so that it can surf and touch the stillness, that perfect bliss. It forgets that it is seeking for the ocean. So ocean is seeking the ocean, but gets caught up in the tidal waves, in the, what do you call those small waves, ripples. But it keeps on missing that perfect wave that it had before. And it gets disappointed. It gets caught up in the surface level, waves appearing simultaneously, one wave right after the other, but is missing the point that the stillness and the waves, the depth of the ocean and the waves are the same. It gets caught up in this fantasy of that infinite wave that will wash away all of its desire for the perfect wave. In deep sleep, it's all ocean. Apparently, the next day it gets caught up again, longing for a journey of freedom. It goes on an epic train ride, jumping from train to train, looking for the final destination, longing for that liberation. But it misses that the trail is already freedom. In deep sleep, there's no rides, there's no trains, there's no destination. It is what it is already. Seemingly again, apparently the next day, it gets caught up and it goes into a circus. It goes and joins the circus or watches the circus, watches all of this lion tamers, jugglers, clowns, and gets caught up in that idea that there must be something that the clown has. That's why they're really happy. So it goes into clowning school to try to get clarity on how to become a clown. In deep sleep, there's no circus. It's already what it is. Seemingly, seeing that it's just really hopeless. There's just going to be rides after rides, seemingly these fantastical rides of seeking. But when it's seen that the seeker is the imaginary role-playing fantasy game of something that never was, then everything is just this. No matter what seems to appear, no matter what seems to not appear, is always this. What is appearing cannot be thought about. There's no reward for seeking. There's no rescue mission. There is nothing at all. It's just this. So all of this fantasy, when it seemingly comes to an end, it wants out of the ride. It wants out of the circus. It doesn't want to chase trains anymore. It's saying, time out, I don't want to play anymore. Then letting go of the fantasy, sometimes it's hard because there's no one letting go of the fantasy. There's always the longing for the next adventure, the next fantasy, the next seeking, the next clown. But the joke is, there are no clowns, there are no seekers, there is no adventure. It's all fantasy. But the fantasy made real. A fantasy that feels absolutely real. When it's seen that it's just a fantasy, then the play just becomes play. But there are no players. Because the imaginary seeker is what is seen as just play. It's just part of the play. The rides, everything, the clowns. The seeking is just fantasy. It's not getting rid of the fantasy because there's no one that gets rid of the fantasy, but the fantasy is over. It's just this. It's just this. It's like going to a roller coaster ride, and when you get off, rather than going back into it, or even going back to it, it's just seen as a ride. It's just seen as a play. There's no one choosing to ride or not ride. There's no one choosing to surf or not surf. It's all play. And this idea that there is something that is better than this, only if I get to the next ride, only if I get to the next adventure, only if I catch the next train, maybe it will lead me to freedom. But the freedom is the play. The freedom is the waves. The freedom is the seeking. The freedom is being lost. The freedom is this. The freedom is this. And the freedom that appears seemingly to be missed is always there in deep sleep. That peace that's longed for, that peace that's yearned for is always this. It just appears as a ride. It just appears as a play. It just appears as waves in the deep, still water of the ocean. The waves that are appearing are not different from the stillness. They're the same. Sometimes it's wavy, sometimes it's still. Sometimes the play at the park gets really rough. Sometimes it's enjoyable. It's all play. It cannot be figured out why this play is playing, but it's just a play playing. It's like an amusement park. When there is a seeming, when there's a kid's play that gets really, really serious, then one feels bad and tells on mommy. When it's seen that it's just play, it's kind of like being a kid and also growing up at the same time. That in this play, I don't know what to call it other than just play. It's just all play. And there's nothing wrong or right in a play. In this play of seeking, when it gets really, really serious, the apparent player wants to get out of the play, but there's this infinite play. There's nothing that you can do about it. There's nothing that can be undone. It is just play. It's just a whole bunch of players, but there are really no players. It's just play. If you want to ask a question about the play, please go ahead. And later on, we karaoke. Welcome back, everyone, to the second day. Thank you so much for coming. Apparently, there is this booming silence. This booming silence that seemingly so under radar, so to speak, but it is infinitely this. Regardless if there is attention or no attention given to it, it's always this. It's like where all the noise arises and where all the sounds seemingly fall back into. This indubitable presence, although it's not a presence, it's not even present, but it's always there. For it to be present, there has to be somewhere or someone to notice it. But it's unnoticeable. But it's undeniable. It's so undeniable that it is so, even if it's denied or not, it's just is. It's like that flat line sound. It's that like a ringing sound. It's always there. always this. And you can't think of it, but it's always there. Some call it the emptiness, the silence. This, it can't really be named. This staggering absence reverberates like echoes of nothing. This infinite repetition of nothing is often heard as something, like thoughts, words, feelings, and meanings, like a phantom train that is chugging, nothing, 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 but is heard as something, something, or everything, everything, everything. So this railway is this peace, this silence, the rail that never moves, the rail that always is, the rail that is always there. I'm just using stories right now. So this piece that seemingly twists and turns, but the rail is always constantly at peace, always at peace, in peace. Peace is peace no matter where it is. This loud silence is the peace that cannot be figured out, because the words that are trying to describe it are just like smoke or vapor coming from a phantom steam train. The illusory chugging of the train constantly ends at each imaginary stops, not noticing that it's already at peace. It's on the infinite trail. It blows its horns and screams, "All aboard! The Advaita Mountaineer, or the Enlightenment Express, or whatever, the Freedom Trail, to a new destination, hoping to find peace, its final stop." But no matter what the name of the train, no matter what the passengers are, no matter how many passengers it disembarks, it is not there. And it will never get anywhere. No matter if it is think that it is the passenger or it's the conductor of the train, it doesn't matter if it thinks that it's the enlightened conductor of the train or the passenger that's trying to be led by enlightened conductor, it will never get anywhere because it's dead in its track. There is no train. There are no passengers. It's just this booming silence, the infinite track. And the train is nothing but a train of thought. The Dream Express, the Illusion Mountaineer. And it keeps on trying to figure out, to find the stop where peace is. But it always misses this track that it's already on. It's a train wreck. It's dead. It's a phantom train. So this train keeps on seeking and seeking and seeking and seeking, going around and around, stopping, disembarking, letting passengers in, thinking that it's driving the train. And it just keeps on going on this phantom journey, chugging along thoughts, trains of thoughts, appearing as reality. But there's no reality to the train. There's not even a track. It's just a story. So what's being expressed here is that this booming silence is in everything. This booming silence is so loud, it's deafening. Any chugging along, any kinds of thoughts, any kind of seeking, it destroys it. Any enlightened gurus, radical speakers are just silence. The listeners are silenced, even if it keeps on chugging, asking questions about how do I get there? When is the final stop? When will we get there? It never, ever gets anywhere because it's already in this infiniteness, in this track that never moves. Nothing ever changes. It's just the chugging of this imaginary train that keeps on seeking peace. But the peace is already The peace is the track. The peace is every step. The peace is every breath. The peace is every thought. It's all peace. And there's nothing missing. There's nothing missing. This blooming silence is all that there is. You can't hear it, but it's always there because it's silence. So the peace that is never understood is always what is. If you have any questions, please go ahead. Oh, thank you. My mom got it for me, this shirt. Yeah, it's just silence. Thank you. No question, just very silent here. I used to take trains and I loved sleeping on a train. You know, when there's the chugging, it's almost this rhythmic. It's like the train of thoughts. And then there's almost kind of a lulling feeling when you're traveling inside a train. The best train in Canada is the Rocky Mountaineer. So it goes all throughout the Rocky Mountains. It's beautiful. I get it, but I don't get it. Wow, train of thoughts. Brilliant. It doesn't get anywhere. It's not even there. Thanks for the great intro, Emerson. It's up there with the freedom is like a highway. Yeah, it's very similar. I like the idea of the peace train or the phantom train or the runaway train. All stories, of course. People are so focused on the train that they forget about the tracks. I like the way that you create these images, words, and then they vanish. Thank you. Again, these are just words and stories about, expressing that it's what already is already obvious, that there's nothing to get, nothing to understand. It's just a story and a fascination with trains. The geek side is coming out. Oh, you didn't miss anything, Joy. Hi, Emerson. That was great introduction. Can you tell us how to stop the chugging? I knew the question. It's a phantom train, so it doesn't matter if it's chugging or not chugging. If you notice that there is just this seeming chugging or kind of like seeking, and then the seeking usually falls apart at night, it goes to a rest stop, and there's no chugging, and it's just this silence, that just the tracks. And then seemingly in the morning, it goes to the new destination. Today, I'm going to be seeking Advaita Express or whatever. Then it goes again. And so the stop and the running are all just basically coming. It's like a pulsation. It's dead on its track, so to speak, because there's really nothing that is moving. Nothing has ever happened. Nothing moves. But everything seems to be moved, like chugging, like seeking, like thinking. Sometimes it does a stop, you know what I'm saying? It gets like a little glimpse that, oh, it's just this infinite tracks. And then somehow it doubts that it's the infinite track or questions, is this it? And then again, you know, it goes again, you know what? Maybe this new train here called the Radical Express or something. But none of the trains, including Radical, it will not get you anywhere. But at least the Radical Express doesn't have any conductor or driver. It's just automatically running. But it'll still not get you there because there's nowhere to go. What is it that we got confused by what is it that we get confused by the thoughts? So the thoughts that seemingly appear is illusory. Again, but the illusion is that it's not an illusion. So the thoughts are made real by the thought that it's real. So the seeming confusion is just a thought about a thought. I'm confused about this thought, which is just another thought. So we'll just keep I need to figure out this thought. It will come up with another thought. It's like the train of thoughts. It will just keep on repeating over and over again. And I think, Mark, we talked about this. The definition of a dream is a series of thoughts and sensations seemingly happening in a sleep. So the confusion is also an illusion. There's nothing to be confused about. There's nothing that really kind of like obscures what is already. In the absence of thoughts and words and feelings, when the train comes to a stop, not by choice, it just stops. There's no confusion. It's just what is. Like in a deep sleep, there's no confusion, there's no questions. It's just this flat line, just this silence that always is. Whistle stop tour makes no sense. Clueless grasping at hints. It's not really hints, just a story. That there is just this is already, like just to say that this is the infinite booming silent track that never moves, that never changes. But there's this seeming train that goes along like a train of thought, like a phantom train of seeking but never finding. But every stop, every movement is already this. It doesn't matter if there's a train or no train, there's always this track. It doesn't have to make sense because the train is trying to make sense of the track. When I used to be seeking, every day seemed to be like a big journey, right? So I'm going to, okay, you know what? I have to do my practices. I have to do my inquiry. I have to do this. And then I would have to write quotes, listen to this. It was just this nonstop chugging. Seeking is such an addiction. Now when it's seen, it's so obvious. Nothing is needed. Stop wanting anything. Thank you. Thank you. It is. There's this seeming kind of like wanting to figure out things, wanting to get to the bottom of it, wanting to find, wanting to see what's missing. This is the incessant feeling of there's something better than this. There's got to be something, the constant negotiation. It's like looking for its high over and over again. So it looks for the highs in words and ideas and concepts. On the video. Okay, is everyone in? Just a second, sorry. Okay, looks like it. What to talk about when it's absolutely nothing? This is a seeming response to a question that was sent to me. So what is being expressed here is that there is this secret hidden agenda of a belief system. There is seemingly a very thin line between this wholeness, this that cannot be spoken about, and the preconception of separation, an apparent belief system. There's seemingly a lot of confusion. You know, there's many different teachers and speakers that's speaking about different things. So again, what's being suggested here is that what is being spoken about is not a belief system, although it might seem like it. First, it's very important to basically express what is meant by the term belief. So a belief system is an apparent mental attitude or conviction that something is true or real. I believe it. This rings true for me. It can be based on evidence. It can be based on experience or authority. And it can be held consciously or unconsciously. Beliefs can be religious, political, cultural, or personal in nature. And they can have a profound impact on the apparent individual's life and behavior. And seemingly, it's really bizarre that belief system seems to appear in non-duality, because what's being expressed is simply not two. So how can a belief formulate or appear when there's no division? So from this directness, the very concept of belief is suspect. Or the newer generation would say it's very sus. My nephew and my nieces, when it's suspicious, they'll be like, it's very sus. This is because beliefs imply a separation between the apparent self and the apparent world. A duality that contradicts the fundamental wholeness, this oneness or noneness of all things that are no things. So apparently belief is a product of a separation, and a separation is a product of belief. I'm going to repeat it. So belief is a product of separation, and separation is a product of belief. See how circular it is? It's just what separation? It's a belief. And belief is a separation. So it just goes back and forth over and over. It goes into this cyclical pattern called the belief system, which is madness, which is what seemingly creates this idea that there's something that is not being gotten because there's a belief system that is missing. So what's being expressed is it creates this illusion of a separate me and a separate world. And in doing so, it creates the benefit for the need of beliefs to maintain the separation. So again, the belief of separation, the separation is a belief. It just goes into this cyclical pattern. And again, this is just a suggestion. This is just another story. In other words, beliefs are a product of the illusory me. Beliefs are a product of this apparent suggestion that there was separation. And it's just what is. And there's nothing wrong or right about belief system, but it's just what is. So when it creeps into non-duality, it becomes this held onto belief system that is often guarded, that is often debated, that this is what is right, this is authority. How can there be, and there's going to be a lot of, belief system figures like sages and saints and teachers and everything. And then it goes something like this: according to insert sage's name here or speaker's name here, there is nothing, whatever, or whatever it is, but that becomes a belief system. So what is being suggested is that beliefs are neither true or false, but rather they are simply an imaginary means construct that is used to create a sense of certainty and security in this uncertainty. But there's joy in this uncertainty. The certainty is the creation of a position that is held that becomes heavy. However, this sense of certainty is also an illusion, as beliefs are constantly changing and evolving, as the apparent illusion creates these new experiences, these new things, new information like AI and languaging like sus or fleek. It just creates this narrative of this ever-expanding separation when there is none. There's no separation. There's really no new information unless there's a belief system. Therefore, to cling to beliefs as absolute truths is to create the unnecessary suffering for the apparent me and thinking that there are others. And what's being suggested is so obvious. It's so clear that without any words, going back to that word track again, beliefs are really nothing. Beliefs are just really empty ideas about separation. And these ideas about separation, these thoughts about separation, creates this narrative of either right or wrong, this or that, whether getting this or not getting that. And it creates this push and pull. Usually, and perhaps a couple of the apparent characters are here listening to this in this Zoom, they would send me text messages, and it's just a whole bunch of belief systems, a bunch of thoughts about suffering. There's no original thought. There's no original belief. There's no origin of things. There's no source of things. There is no source of suffering. There's no source of bliss. There's no source of separation, because the very source in itself is just a thought, and it's just backed up by another thought. So it's just really like a rabbit hole or a whirlpool of belief system that just goes round and around and around in a circle. And usually when the character goes into rabbit hole, the character is believed to be a separate individual that are having these illusory ideas of separation based on a belief system. Therefore, there's this seemingly secret agenda of a belief system to believe that it's separate. But how do you stop a cyclical when it's seen that these are just patterns? It's like, when I was a little kid, I used to go around and around and around in a circle, and there was this bliss, and I would stop and I would get dizzy. It's a spell. It's a spell of separation by belief system that there is a separation, and it just goes around in a circle. And there is nothing wrong or right about that. What's also being expressed is that the absence of beliefs, because this is what's being suggested, is not a state of apathy or nihilism, but it's actually rather an openness. When there's no belief system, there is this receptivity to what is. It's not held on to, it's not filtered to by belief system. It's not filtered to, well, that's not really non-duality, or that's not really radical. That's just a belief system. When there's a seeing that beliefs are just systems, cyclical system, there is a sense of wonder and curiousness. Like a child, like an infant walking into the forest, seeing the tree for the first time, seeing leaves, walking on grass, looking at the sky. There's just this openness, this curiousness that apparently allows more connectivity rather than separation to what is. It doesn't see itself as separate from what is, because the belief that it's separate is not there. It's not really there. There's really no belief system that is held on to, because who's holding a belief system? Who maintains a belief system? What is even a belief system? When the character goes to sleep, the belief system dies completely. It drowns in the deepest sleep. And seemingly it resurrects with this singular idea of separateness, and it becomes this cyclical, continuous belief system. And it will say that, well, when I was young, I used to do this. And then when I was seeking, I believe what this person is saying. This is not about believing what this character is saying, because this is just empty words that does not require a belief system. What's being expressed here fully and completely does not require any kind of understanding. This is just aliveness. This is just timelessness. This is timeless aliveness. And that's what is. And the only thing that the me or the character functions is either a belief in this or that, a belief in this or that. When that seeming spell is broken, when it collapses, when it breaks, the dam breaks wide open, and there's just this openness. There's this allowance. There's this open invitation without judgment and preconceptions that arises from beliefs. There's just this. So apparently, and this is just a story, seeking liberation, enlightenment, awakening, or whatever seems to be longed for, is like looking for a cure for an imaginary illness. An imaginary illness called separation. So this apparent two-ness syndrome is a complete delusion. So it like makes up an imaginary terminal situation of getting rid of something that was made up in the first place by either looking for the cure of the separation through pseudo practices, by being aware of something that was never there in the first place, or an imaginary inquiry into a separation that never took place. So in this apparent seeking, looking for the cure of something that never was, it tries to extract or drop the me, the me tumor. So it can be healed and whole again. But there was never me in the first place. Seemingly, it becomes a purpose. It becomes a meaningful exploration on the journey to be whole and complete again. But what's being expressed here is that there was no illness in the first place. So there's no cure that's needed for something that never took place. It's like being a hypochondriac that think that there's something wrong every time that there's an apparent me flare-up. How do I get rid of these voices? How do I get rid of this separation? But there's no separation. Everything that is happening is already as it is. It's already complete and whole. It's already healed. There's nothing broken. There's nothing wrong. But seemingly, it looks for these apparent teachers or speakers to look for a cure, because there is this idea, because it's an illness and separation, that somehow the speaker or the teacher has healed completely and is blissfully happy because it doesn't have a me, or it doesn't have any sense of separation. It's enlightened. Which is really, really silly, because there was nothing wrong in the first place. And it depending on the levels of honesty, and this is just a story because there are no others, of the speaker or the teacher, it's either going to express that, well, you know what, there's a me there, but we can drop it. There's a me that needs to drop, or there is some practices that can be done to create this wholeness again. Or there's going to be a brutal speaker that will just say, there's nothing separate. There's no imaginary illness. This character was convinced of that illness, and it was a do or die situation. It really thought that it was something wrong and it has to drop or cure something that was never there. So it searched wide and far looking for a cure, looking for a healer, looking for someone to heal the divide and hopefully create this wholeness again. But it kept on encountering this speakers that would say that it's already done, it's already complete. That's what's being expressed here. There's nothing that's needed to be healed because there never was an illness. It's like an imaginary idea that something was separated in the first place. It's like going to a doctor and the doctor will say, well, the x-rays, show that there's nothing wrong. There's nothing that needs to be removed because there was no tumor in the first place. Again, just a little bit of clarity here. There's no separation. There is no me or no me. There are no others. There's no witness to this. To observe is to see another, which is basically another symptom of separation, which is an apparent illness that never happened. It can never see itself because there was never a self. There's no separate self, no lower or higher. There's no source, because everything that can be thought of as separate is just another symptom of this apparent illness that never happened, called separation. There's no source because that would imply another. There's no divine union to divide, to get, whole again in eternal bliss. There's no infinity to chase, no awareness to be aware of, or even an emptiness to dive into. Nothing at all, or not even an all-encompassing consciousness to abide in. Not even everything, becoming nothing. That's just another idea. Or an awakening from a dream because there's no dream. Apparently, this is like a dream, but there's no dream. There are no veils of separation. Not even an illusion to see through. You can also see that there's no illusion, and at the same time, it's all illusion. There's no great mystery that needs to be unraveled or solved. There's no gateless gate. There's no pathless path. No home that cannot be found because this is already home. We're a paradise that was ever lost. There's no miracle healer that can heal this divide. There is no one that can undo something that was never, ever wrong. Simply, there's nothing at all that was ever wrong. There is this seemingly neurotic hypochondria that there's always something wrong. It's like believing in a fake illness and looking for someone to cure it. Simply, all that there is this. There is no separation in this. There is no separation in this. All that there is this that cannot be spoken of, this unspeakable this unknowable this. And any kind of movement is a delusion of trying to figure it out or trying to arrive somewhere, having a position, figuring it out. That's the imaginary illness that seems to go around and around in a circle on trying to figure out something that cannot be figured out. Because trying to figure out is just another symptom of that imaginary illness called separation. There's nothing to figure out. Or looking for a fully healed, fully enlightened character does not exist, because that's another symptom of separation. That's just another idea. In the story, again, this is just a story, the seeking for the cure, maybe the elimination of the me, which would be the cure for someone that thinks that there is a me, is just a symptom of this apparent illusion that there is a separate, like an illness that cannot be cured. Since there's no illness, since it's just a made-up illness, there's nothing to heal. There's nothing missing. There's nothing to cure. There is no hope. Because giving hope to someone thinks that there is an illness is cruel. It's just really cruel, isn't it? Or even saying to someone that, well, you know what, when the me drops, but there's no me in the first place. There's no one in the first place. There's no such thing as contraction, separation. So what's being expressed here, this is already whole and complete. There's nothing missing here. There's nothing needed. It's already done. Seemingly in the story, when there was this big belief system that there was something wrong with me, that there was something that I needed to let go of, maybe something that I needed to surrender, maybe needed something to drop or something to unite with or to be aware of. It's just a symptom of that illusory made up illness of thinking that there's separation. And when it's seen that separation is just a word, true or false are just words, you and me are just words swirling in this that's already complete, in this that's already free. There's nothing to be liberated because there's nothing that was not liberated. There's nothing that has been separate because this is already whole. So whatever seems to appear, the question might be, well, like, I still feel like that there's a me. Well, what's wrong with that? If it's just imagined, if it's just made up, if it passes. So the idea that there's something that needs to be dropped or something that needs to happen is another idea that there's something wrong, that there's something missing, that there's something lacking, but nothing is lacking. It's already this. So in this apparent thisness, if you would like to ask a question, please go ahead. Thank you. Welcome, everyone. So what is being suggested is it's really simple. What is seeking is conspicuously absent. What is resisting is always persisting. What is happening is unraveling. So what is? What is softly stumbling back and forth to the silence of this what isness? What is unwittingly and helplessly fumbling towards the ecstasy of unknowing? What is rejecting and accepting simultaneously? What is struggling and settling in at the same time? Doing and undoing simultaneously, spontaneously. So what is falling back to what is already what is? Is what is always just what is, no matter what is? So what is seeking itself? What is that? What is all that there is? Is this always what is? Is this unconditionally what is, no matter what is seemingly going on? but there's also nothing going on. So what is this unspeakableness that keeps on getting mentioned over and over again, that this is it? It's already done. It's complete. It's over. But there is this narrative that's playing that I wish it was over. When will I get there? I hope soon. But seemingly that movement, that motion, that seemingly going back and forth is hopeless. It will not get anywhere. It will not find. It will just keep on going back on a loop over and over and over again. Instead of seeing that it's just what is. It's just what seems to be going on. There is a what if, how, and all of this narrative forms this confusion of something that's already really clear. This is how freedom is when it's unconditional. This is freedom without anyone interfering with what is, because there's no one that can interfere with what is. What is going to be whatever it is, no matter what it is. So what is this seemingly game of seeking? Does the game exist if there are no players? What is seeking without a seeker? So if there's no game, there's no players, there's no winning or losing. So it's over. Seekers cannot exist without seeking. So seeking is not real without a seeker. But what is a seeker? What is a seeker? Does it really exist? Does seeking even happen? What seems to be happening when it's not? You can also say that there's absolutely nothing happening. This is already completely done. It's over. And what seemingly seems to appear is also what is. There's nothing wrong with what's happening, but when there's a narrative that I am seeking, I'm looking for something, I hope I get this, then it comes into this never-ending loop of getting this, losing it, wanting this, not getting it. So there's a going back and forth of something that is already, something that is this. So what this is cannot be figured out, cannot even be spoken about, cannot be called anything. Because the moment that there's a moment in this momentlessness, then it goes into this narrative of being lost or something lacking in this completeness. There's nothing lacking here. There's nothing missing here. And in this, wow, this is so obvious that the moment that you think of it, the moment that it's trying to be captured, then it goes into this realm of trying to understand what this is, trying to get something that cannot be gotten, trying to capture something that cannot be captured. It's just this. And even that, it's always this. And there's nothing outside of this because this is not divisible. So there's this unbroken silence, this emptiness. I'm using words now. These words are not necessary. This peace that does not waver. This love that's unconditional. The moment that speaking cuts through, or thought happens, or moments happen, or trying to figure it breaks the silence, seemingly, of something that is already. The moment that the speaking happened of the unspeakable, it cuts through and it becomes divided. It becomes this or that. It becomes a knowing. So there's this stillness that cannot be understood. It's immovable. The moment that a movement happens, the moment that a seeking happens, a processing happens, it misses the stillness that is in everything, that there's nothing lacking. So this speaker is just speaking in words. These words are completely meaningless and empty. It's just trying to express what cannot be expressed by suggesting that what's being expressed is neither true or false, neither believable or unbelievable. It's just what is. And what is already this. And what is this cannot be figured out. And that's the ultimate retirement of not trying to figure things out, because it can't be figured out, because the moment that a figuring out happens, then it becomes a moment, and it looks for another moment, that there's something lacking in this moment. But what this is momentlessness. This is all that there is. There's nothing outside of this. It's just this. Nothing is everything. Everything is nothing. And these are just words again that seems to obscure what is obvious without saying a single word. The words that becomes barriers, words that are clung onto, is what seems to obscure what is perfectly clear, without any thoughts, without any understanding, without any narrative, without any concepts. No non-duality needed. It doesn't have to be whatever. It's just this. And there's nothing that can be done because it's already done. There's nothing outside of this. And that's what is. If you have any questions, please go ahead. We can talk more about this if you like. If not, that's completely all right as well. If you also want to ask a question by typing it, please go ahead. Oh, there's a question here, sorry. Seeking is a part of the dialogue that isn't real. Yeah, none of this is real. Everything that's seen, heard, every single word, every single idea, every single concept, none of it. It's just not one. So when there's an arrival that this is real, it creates a division of something that is neither real or unreal. It's just what is. There's nothing to know, because knowing creates this division of either this or that. Okay, I like this question here. I'm going to open up the chat so everyone can see it. When you say it's obvious, why is it not obvious to me? What is obscuring it? The me. Because there's no me. What's obvious is, without any thoughts, without any ideas, without any question, there is no you. But the one that, again, there's just this silence, this infinite silence that doesn't need knowing because it's silent. It's obvious in the deep sleep. It's that there is no one. But the moment that there's a seeking on trying to figure out if there is, why is this obvious? Then it creates this division that I don't get it. You will never get it. Because there's no you to get it. There's no you to process it. The you that's appearing as a thought cannot unthink itself. The self can't get rid of the self because it will just keep on being a self. A me can't drop a me because there was no me in the first place. The obviousness is that all of this noise, all of this talking, all of this figuring out is not real. It appears real. It appears like that there is something, but it's also nothing. Like, for example, seeking can only happen in thoughts. Without thoughts, there is no seeking. You are just a word. If we take out all the words, there's no you, there's no me, it's just this. And this is just a very, it's just a very, basically kind of like a word that does not have a lot of meanings. It's just this. Without any thoughts, if it's just this, isn't it obvious? And then, of course, what usually happens is the seeker tries to figure out what's obvious. I'm going to get another lozenge here. I'm doing good so far. Hi, Sylvia.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello. Sylvia from Montreal, right?
Mm-hmm.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Got things going on the side, but
Awesome. Good to hear from you.
yeah, likewise, my friend.
Thank you, my friend. Question here. No thoughts seem to be impossible. Just a second here. Let me just, no thoughts seem to be impossible. There are always thoughts. How can there be no thoughts? A thought only exists as a thought. There are no thoughts. How can there be a thought if there's no thought? The thought only exists in thoughts. In a deep sleep, there's no thoughts. And then you think about the deep sleep. And there are moments of clarity all throughout the day that's not noticed because there are no thoughts. Sometimes you're just going around in your day, busy and everything, and you don't remember most of it because it's just what is. So happening only appears as thoughts. This happened to me and everything, and it's just this automaticness of these thoughts coming in and out. But there's no one doing it. It's just appearing, and then it's gone, and it appears. And a thought about continuity, a thought about time, a thought about separation are just all thoughts. If every single thought was collapsed, if there was a blackout of thoughts right now, would you know what this is? Would you even know you? Will there even be a knowing without thoughts? It's just what is. I was in a breakout room last week and started crying so much. Oh, I feel so embarrassed even though there's no me. I couldn't control it. Why do I feel so bad about it? I'm not really sure. But what seems to occur is that there's just this appearance of feelings. Sometimes this communication is too confronting because it's pointing out what is obvious that the me does not want to admit. The obvious is that it's not here. There's even not a here. If you would like to talk about that, more about that iPhone, please go ahead. There's no one doing it, so there's no one controlling it. So it's just, we can just call it innocence just happening. It's just what is crying. It's just whatever it is that appears is just what is. There's no one doing any of it. There's no one at all. So it's just what is. Again, if every word has been taken away, and it's just absent of everything. No concepts, no non-duality, no you, no others, just this. If the only word that's left ever is this, this. But if you would like to ask more, please go ahead. If I don't think about something, does that thing does not exist? Is that also true for past? If there's no thought, there is no world, because I may stop thinking, but the world exists, doesn't it? Everything that is apparently from the perspective of an individual that's moving through time and space is a narrative, because it just appears as thoughts, as ideas. Without that perspective, without that, without that lens, none of this is happening. Mala goes, maybe perhaps your crying was just an expression of an inner joy or an unknown discovery. Yeah, that could be it too. Thanks, Mala. So apparently this is the last meeting ever. I'm just joking. There's no last and there's no first. What's being expressed is that there is no end to this, since this does not have a beginning. This wordlessness that appears as words is seeking the absence in words. So what does it mean when there's no end to this? It could either be perceived as a nightmare or as a dream, or it's just something that cannot really be fully expressed, because expressing it in a narrative, in a story, creates more narrative about something that cannot really be pinpointed at, something that cannot be inquired about, because there's no self to inquire. Something that is an impossible becomes a possible reality, when reality is impossible, since that simply projects or creates a dualistic impression of something that cannot be separated. Let's not even get stuck with words like cannot be separated, because it creates right away an idea. So what has been spoken about, what is being heard, everything that has been said in the past 3 days, surprise, is meaningless. The moment that the meaning arises, the moment that it tries to capture even the suggestions that there are no words, it creates an alternate reality, a thought that there are no words. Simply, this is just, I'm using words again here because it's hard not to use words in trying to express something that cannot be expressed in words. This is, call it the unknowable aliveness, because it's not known, but there is this palpable, felt sense of an apparent reality that does not have any reality. It's just this full-on unknowable aliveness that seems to appear in everything, but what seems to be focused on is that localized, centralized, using words like location, to and from. So language is like a dead language that resurrects like zombies. It rises and it falls. It rises and it falls. And it resurrects again over and over again, over and over again. But what is seemingly like a show of words trying to obscure this unknowable aliveness into something known, it creates a two. It creates a beginning and an end. So what doesn't have a beginning creates an ending, but only in thoughts. Because when there are no thoughts, when there is no words, what is really ending, or what's even a beginning? Pause here. Simply, there are no pauses. What seems to be appearing does not have a pause because it's still, but it's moving in words. It's narrated through words. And the words, as empty as they are, creates this, wow, oh shit. Whatever seems to appear, it's a the full onness of something that cannot be expressed. I'm not going to advise anything like, end your seeking in words, but it's obvious that without words, there's no seeking. But seeking happens even without words. Movement happens in stillness. But without words, what is really happening? It's just something that's undeniable. Something that is so plainly obvious. It doesn't need a reason. It doesn't need to have any meaning. It's just whatever is on display is it. So vision might arise, hearing might arise, sensations might happen. But are they really even happening? Is anything really going on? Is anything really going on? See, when the questioner is eliminated, what is going on? So when the questions end and the answer does not matter, the shackles in words, the imprisonment in concepts, the towers of belief system, when they rise and fall, there's just this freedom on whatever is on display. Anger, frustration, love, fear. But what's being suggested is, since that these are just movements, inging, wording, illusioning, dreaming, then all of a sudden, what seemed to be held on to, whatever seemed to be tried to be figured out, loses its meaning, loses its necessity, loses its friction, loses its neurosis. There's a natural surrender to the rising and falling of words. But the words are not chased or not objected or not held on to. Kind of like what I said earlier, when there is a loss of everything, when everything that was held on to seemingly just can't be held on to anymore. The meaning of life, the purpose of life, the importance of enlightenment, the yearning for awakening, the dropping away of the me, the yearning for the freedom that seems to be really elusive. When all of those phrases are just strung along like words that's like zombies, basically, that rise and fall, it just becomes a spectacle of words, a spectacle of meanings, a spectacle of symbolisms. But there's no reality to any of them. There's no reality to any of this. The reality is just perceived. It's made up. And before you can think about, is this just another illusion? What's even an illusion? What's even a mystery? When they're just really just words. So whatever rises, falls. Whatever is made up gets figured out. Not by anyone, by just the glaring clarity that whatever is that you're trying to figure out, whatever is trying to figure out is trying to figure out something beyond this, because it's afraid to get figured out, that it's not even real. So the unreal happening that's not happening simultaneously and not really even going on is this show. This show of surrender, this show of acceptance, this show of ease, this show of dis-ease, this show of whatever seems to play. Since it's all play, a play of words, a play of light, a play of meaning, a play of purpose. Is play just this or that? Or is it all of it? So everything seemingly is a play, and that's just trying to put a word on something that is not a something. There's no getting this, not because there is a lack. There's no getting this because there's no this. There's no it. The moment that you think, what is it? It evaporates. And that frustration of trying to get something that there never was. It's like the Ouroboros, like the I think someone mentioned it earlier. It's like chasing its own tail. But it doesn't even have any reality, because reality is just made up. The persistence of kind of like a child at play, kind of like when you're telling a child, well, go to bed, it's midnight now, and it's afraid to disappear. It's afraid that if it admits or it accepts, saying its defeat of going to sleep. So it tries to be awake. So it creates this idea that there's an alternate awakeness, that even though it's asleep, it's awake. Even though it's dead, it's alive. Even though it cannot be separated, it branches off into a separate identity. And that identity is you. Although there's no you, the apparent you creates all of this. But since this is created, nothing is really being created. It's all uncreated. There's no source to this. There's no meaning to this. And that's the great news. If you have any questions, please go ahead. And we'll chat